at, I took a substantial pay cut when I moved from the firm to the foundation, but when I looked at, I could build a life with what the foundation gave me, but I didn't want to be stuck in a life that I couldn't afford.
Okay. So you picked up and you go to Boston, and you get a job in a different field. How did that play out? Talk to us about money-wise. Was this a lateral move money-wise? Did you make more? Did you make less? Because you weren't at the law firm that long, right?
No, I was still making a first-year associate salary.
Okay.
But it was still a substantial pay cut.
Okay. So your consideration was, this isn't not going to take me where I want to go, just holistically. I'm going to pick up, go to Boston, try something different.
Yeah.
That'll be hopefully good money-wise, but more.
Well, I thought that I did a fair amount of research before I made the move, because I said,
I bet you did.
Just because of who I am as a person.
Yes.
But I looked at what the pathways from my current position could be and what those salaries might look like. So I had a bigger financial picture, understanding that the pay increases weren't going to be the same as the lockstep system that a law firm has. I understood that my earning potential would eventually cap out similarly, assuming that I advanced the same way as I could from associate to partner. I guess the difference is that there are a lot more intermediate steps at a law firm. You can get second year, third year, fourth year salaries are different.
So you were taking a step back, but it was just you that you were taking care of, and you were young in your career. You were willing to take a step or two back, but you weren't sacrificing your earnings potential over the long arc of your career. Right.
I think my earning potential stayed the same. It was just that I was starting in a different position, right? Okay. So the program officer position that I had, just by virtue of what it is, makes less than a first year associate, but it has bigger increases along the way.
Okay. So let's switch gears slightly and just talk about your views on money. What did you learn about money growing up?
I can't recall like a specific conversation that I had with my parents sitting down and teaching me how to, how to pay a credit card bill, what a mortgage is. I can't, but I always knew that they did it. I think, we talked a little bit before the podcast about it, like learning through observation.
Okay.
And then I feel really lucky because, as you mentioned earlier, I have an older brother, Brian, and he was also kind of the canary in the coal mine, where I could watch him do what he was going to do. He's 7 years older than I am, 6.5, and so I could kind of watch him and ask him questions before I actually had to do it myself. So my brother has been a huge resource for me. As I make any decision, I usually loop him in and ask his opinion because he's done it before, just 7 years prior.
Okay. And would you say you grew up in a rich family, very poor, average middle class, upper middle class?
I think probably, middle class. Both of my parents are in education. My dad was a middle school principal for a long time. My mom teaches middle school reading and language arts. So I never needed anything, but there were things that I wanted that I didn't get.
Okay. So you went to undergrad relatively close to home, but then you went to law school in Virginia, as we said. So I imagine at Virginia you probably got exposed to more different types of people economically, socioeconomically, views on money, ethnically, all of that stuff. So could you point to anything that you might have gotten exposed to in law school that maybe challenged or made you rethink what you learned about money growing up?
I can't think of a specific person. I know that there were a lot of folks who, as you mentioned, there were a lot of folks who came from families that were better off than mine. Right. Financially, there were a lot that came from folks that, they were on full scholarships and they came from families that were less affluent than mine. But I think the commonality was that I don't know what to say to that question, if I'm honest.
Okay. So how about, so you learn what you did about money, you go to school, but you're learning about debt, right? Yeah. And you're thinking about work-wise. Was there ever a time that what you learned at home kind of changed? Not really?
I think that, the difference was that my parents didn't go into significant debt for their educational expenses the way I did. And so I was in a new position in that, I mean, my parents sweated out buying their first condo, and I think it was like $60,000. Right. And I, full disclosure, probably spent $250,000 on my brain so far. And so they helped counsel me through, here's what we should do, here's what we can do. But their experience was a lot less severe than mine, I guess. They had to pay off a $60,000 condo as their first house, and I'm trying to pay off my $250,000 law school.
So then you get into the business world, right? Between the law position as well as the program manager at the Stanton Foundation. Now that you've been working a few years and you're out of school, have your thoughts on money evolved or changed? Have you learned new things? Tell us about that.
So when I was in law school, right, I took out loans from the government, like a lot of people do. Yeah. And so I was making negative money, right, because I was spending money that I had to pay interest on. So I was making negative money. So I certainly wasn't building a savings account or a retirement account or anything like that, because any money that I put in there was really expensive money. Right. So I wasn't building those things. And then when I got into the working world, I started to have an income, so I could not only pay off my educational debt or start paying off my educational debt, but I could also start, saving for retirement or saving for a rainy day, or, right now I'm saving for a house. Saving for our wedding, things like that. And I now that I have an income, I realize, what on paper looks like a decent amount of money after you pay yourself and put your money in all of these different places. Right. All of a sudden, it's not that much.
So let's jump ahead for a moment. So let's fast forward, 10, 15, 20 years, and you and Kyle are going to be financially successful, live the American dream. What do you think the keys will be for you to be successful over, again, the next 10, 15, 20 years? What do you think you've learned so far are going to be key in you being financially successful, you and Kyle being financially successful?
Well, I think a huge key for me is building a budget and sticking to it as best you can, but adjusting it as necessary. So, for example, I built out a budget when I first moved to Boston based on the salary that I was making at the time. And then when I got a raise, I adjusted that salary. When I realized I adjusted that budget, excuse me. When I realized I wanted to save for a house and didn't want to pay a lease anymore, I adjusted my savings. So I think the key for me was always staying grounded and knowing what I'm doing on paper instead of just winging it. I'm a natural planner anyway, so seeing things in an Excel spreadsheet is nice. But always realizing if I overspend one month, then maybe I need to save extra the next month, and actually seeing that out has helped me stay on target.
So you think part of the key to success would be staying grounded, having a plan, so you're aware of what you're doing, you're purposeful in what you're doing. You also mentioned, though, that you need to be flexible because life happens. Yeah. What you think you want may be different later on, or life may throw you curveballs, but to have a plan.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, have your budget, but don't be afraid when you deviate from it because you're going to some months, because your car's going to break down, or your heating bill's going to be higher than expected, or a million things could happen. And so realizing that one month you might save a little extra, one month you might spend a little extra, but actually knowing what you're doing instead of just swiping a card and figuring out what happened later.
Okay, excellent. So you mentioned that you're a natural planner. One of the questions I had written down in preparation for this was, are you a natural saver or a natural spender?
I'm definitely a saver.
Definitely a saver.
The joke that I tell is, like, a long time ago, if I were in like 1920, I would hide my money under my mattress. Every paycheck I just throw under there in cash. I like to. There's something gratifying about like putting money in a savings account for me and watching that grow over time and realizing that I'm accumulating wealth that I can spend on something big or important to me, like a house.
All right. So you are saving. So you're getting married.
Yep.
You're saving for a house.
2018 is going to be a big year.
A lot of big, like, adult, I think you used that term earlier in the conversation. I mean, these are really fabulous, blessed events.
Yeah.
American dream. I mean, it's awesome. I'm so happy for you and
Thanks.
Kyle.
Yeah.
But how scary is it?
It's terrifying, right? Between my educational debt and a potential mortgage, I'll be more in debt in the next year than I have been ever before. And so that's scary. But like I said, going back, what grounds you, that it's easy to get overwhelmed by that, right? There's a big number at the end of a bill that has your name on it, and that can be scary, and I get that. But what helps keep me grounded is having that plan and going back and saying, but this is what it looks like on a monthly level. This is what it looks like on a yearly level, and being able to wrap my brain around doing it and saying, that's doable. Like, a $500,000 house looks like a lot of money on paper and it's scary, but if you break it down and look at what it looks like monthly plus 2 incomes, you can figure out how to do it. You're
not doing it impulsively or without a plan. So some people, they'll get married and they'll say, we got married, we got to buy a house, and they buy a house, and then 3 months in they're like, yeah, we bought too much house, like we have no money for food. But so I'm really sensitive to that. And I mean, for what it's worth, I made the financial decision to buy a house when Kyle and I were dating, and I was just gonna buy a house, and it wasn't the impulsive, let's get married, let's put up a white picket fence, let's start a family. It wasn't that. It was, this is a good financial decision because I hate paying someone else's mortgage. I want to pay my own mortgage. So it was a strategic financial decision I made, not like an impulse lifestyle decision that I made. Excellent. So you're a natural saver. How would you describe Kyle? He is too, maybe even more than I am. I think I kind of diversify my money a little bit more, where I'm comfortable saying I'm saving this for X and that for Y, and so a few $100s here, a few $100s there, and I kind of spread my money out over a few different savings mechanisms. Kyle more saves for a thing. Like, I need to save for whatever, I need to save for this, I need to save for that. And now that we've kind of started blending our lives more intimately, now that we're getting married, it's more like, well, I'll save for this and you save for that. I'll save for this and you save for that. So good teamwork. Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, are there any mistakes or missteps that you could point to that are kind of cautionary, like things that you did that you wish you didn't do? Because it sounds like you've had success upon success, and you're obviously very smart. You went to a great law school. You made a good career move. Moving to Boston's worked out in a number of ways, career-wise, closer to family, meeting Kyle, all that stuff. So, any mistakes? That's tough. I think that I don't know if it was a mistake or not. But I'll pretend I'm my dad for a second. All right. And I'll say I would be in a much different financial position if I'd gone to a different law school that offered me a full scholarship. Because I wouldn't be in severe educational debt, which would make the money that goes to the fund that pays off my debt now would be money that I have available. So you made a decision to go to an elite top 10 law school instead of with second tier or a top 25, between 10 and 25, there was a significant cost differential. Yeah, there was. And I think that, for me, maybe I just drank the UVA Kool-Aid, but it was the greatest 3 years of my life. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And so for that reason, I don't know if I'd classify it as a mistake, but I think that if I look at it from through purely a financial lens and not a lifestyle lens or an experience lens, you might call the decision to pay a lot of money for a law school degree when you had an opportunity to pay little or nothing for that degree, I think you could classify as a mistake. Okay. That's good, because it's complicated, because you can't it's not just economic. Right, you have to live it for 3 years, right? Yeah. So you have to enjoy the experience. It's not just it's not just like spending money on something that you experience for a day or 2 days. It's, you have to live this life for 3 years. And so there's a lot that goes into that decision. That makes sense. But I would be in a significantly different financial position had I not chosen to encumber that debt at that time. All right. Good. You, final question, I think. What's something you splurge on? You're a natural planner.
Yeah.
You're a natural saver. Give us an example of some place in your budget that you kind of splurge.
I think